Thank you. Mr. Sullivan, you know, the Best Management Practice Review Panel found that many important recommendations made in the 1999 ARB convened after the Nairobi and Dar es Salaam bombings were not in fact implemented. In fact, you wrote, this report was largely ignored by the Department and did not receive wide circulation within either the Department or DS at the time. Many of the senior officials involved before, during, and after the Benghazi attacks, including the ARB, held senior positions within the Department prior to and after the 1998 attacks. At the time, Thomas Pickering was the Undersecretary for Political Affairs, Patrick Kennedy was the Acting Assistant Secretary for Diplomatic Security, Susan Rice was the Assistant Secretary for the Bureau of African Affairs. What did your Best Management Panel recommend to ensure that the State Department would actually implement the recommendations set forth in your report and by the Benghazi ARB?
You know, Congressman, what we thought was that it's really important that this be an enterprise-wide initiative, that everybody has to be involved in this and everybody has to understand what their roles are. We talked about how important accountability is. And we didn't look at accountability as a negative. We looked at accountability as a positive, as an enabler.
Yep.
So we just felt that, you know, with these recommendations, I can't speak to what happened in the past, but we do believe that this is not just about the Office of Diplomatic Security, but it's about department-wide and everybody knowing what their responsibilities are and what their accountability is, and that everybody work on this together. For example, risk management. You know, we believe that, you know, having a formalized risk management model is something that is very important. And again, not just for the Department of Diplomatic Security, but also for the whole enterprise.
Mr. Keel, would you agree with that?
Certainly, Congressman. I think Mr. Sullivan hit on a fundamental issue. We were talking previously about the facility in Benghazi, how high the walls were, if there was any blast resistance, how many agents were there. Those tactical things are important, but the fundamental issue comes down to the State Department does not have a risk management process to determine and make informed decisions should we be in some of these places with a full understanding of the risk. That's what our panel found.
So let's go back. So will regular Best Management Panel evaluations be conducted to ensure that the recommendations set forth in your report and that the ARB recommendations will be followed?
Right. That is part of the ARB recommendation that created our panel. It called for regular reevaluation.
So, and I guess what I'm coming back to is accountability, right? And part of that accountability could be part of Congress's duty, would it not?
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, obviously, some of the recommendations are going to take congressional action.
And I'm a private sector guy, so I mean, this mortifies me what I've just seen here, because accountability is very implicit. I mean, you're going to have stack-up attorneys, you're going to have depositions, you're going to have transcriptions. You don't get a go past go and collect $200. That doesn't work in the private sector. You know, so from the standpoint of the records that we've been talking about at this ARB, the State Department is withholding those interview summaries that have come out because there's no transcriptions, but you know there has been a recorded log. In order for Congress to do its job, we should have the access to those, should we not?
I think that's probably a question more for Admiral Mullen and Ambassador Pickering.
Oh, no, I'm asking you.
Yes, I believe so.
How do you feel about that, Mr. Sullivan?
You know, I would agree that if these are documents that Congress is entitled to, that they should have them to review as well.
How about that, Admiral Mullen?
Again, I have a long-standing history in terms of providing documents when requested, and I think it's something that's got to be worked out between the Hill.
No. It doesn't need to be worked out. I mean, it's our due diligence, sir. I mean, accountability. I mean, I'm talking to a man who's very accountable, and through his whole lifetime has been that way. The mantra in this place, in this beltway, needs to change. There needs to be accountability. So I would hope that you would genuinely come forward and say, absolutely, those records should be turned over.
I have lived my life focusing on accountability.
I know. So
I feel very strongly about that.
I would expect you to say, absolutely, yes, that those records should be turned over to Congress. I mean, from what I've ever seen and I've ever heard of you, that you would say absolutely accountability and transparency should be there. And I personally, you, Admiral Mullen, would see it right that turn those records over.
I have, believe me, I'm right where you think I am with respect to accountability. The issue of the specifics of what's inside that has to be worked out, specifically with respect to records. I mean, I've been in departments that for reason, whatever the reason is, they don't provide or take a long time. And I'm not privy, quite frankly, to the specifics of why those are not being provided right now.
So you don't like the status quo?
So, no, I think that where we were in the ARB was to try to get to the best position we could with respect to accountability, driven by the law, quite frankly.
I understand, but part of that accountability is the oversight of Congress, and part of the oversight of Congress for implementation, because we've seen this timeline of ineptitude of implementing these discussions from previous actions. And part of that is that we're not getting part of the records to actually have that oversight, because legislating is not just budgets.
The gentleman's
it's also
time has
about
expired.
this.
I think oversight to ensure implementation and execution in the long term makes a lot of sense.
I thank the Admiral.